Hey folks, hello. How are we doing? Do I need these headphones on? I maybe don't. Not yet, anyway. I'll maybe need them for if I'm doing Studio One. But I think I'll take them off just now. I don't know if anybody is watching or not. I just need to set up a couple of things, folks. I do apologize for being late. I just had a family issue that I needed to deal with, so I'm sorry about that. But I am live right now, so I'm here and I'm ready for your questions. This is, as I said, this is not going to be flashy or anything else. I'm not going to have all the cool graphics and stuff that Johnny and Dave have, because I'm using Hangouts on Air to do this. But that's cool. We'll make good of it. I'm just going to make sure that people know that I am live. I'm live now. I probably need to share the link to the live video as well. Let's do that. Let's go Control P. And let's go to not there. Damn, I didn't want to do that. Didn't want to do that. I clicked the wrong thing. HST. Studio One support. Live now. So hopefully we'll get this show on the road. Peter, good evening. Good to see you, mate. You are the first to arrive, I think. Anyone else in here? Drop me a line in the chat and let me know. Also, let me know what you think of the quality of the image as well and everything else, because I need to make sure that the feed is good. I just need to do some adjusting to my screen at this end. Hey, Truckee. Truckee Kruger is a legend. For those of you that don't know him, he's great. He's incredibly helpful and incredibly skillful with all things design and computers and that kind of stuff. So that's great that you're here, mate. So that's Peter and Truckee so far, and we have 5 in the room. So if you've not said anything like hello or anything like that yet, then let us know you're here, and we can get this show on the road. I am intending to be here until somewhere between 11:30 my time and midnight my time. So that's going to be probably 5:30 to 6 p.m. And then, of course, Johnny Geib has his stream over on his site. Picture looks good to you, but I'm no way an expert on the subject. That's fine, Peter. That's all I'm after. So long as it looks good enough that you could sit and watch it, then that's great. That's all I'm after. So I am using Google Hangouts on Air to do this, because I cannot use OBS and I cannot use Wirecast because my internet upload speed is not fast enough. It just won't do it. I mean, some of you may have seen my test live streams that I've done using OBS, and it just won't work. It just freezes and stutters and doesn't look very good. So the only issues that we may have with Google Hangouts on Air is that it is at 720p. That's the maximum it will go to. But when I share my screen and I have Studio One up, it has a nasty habit of defaulting back to 480p. So when I do that, when I'm going to be doing any examples that you may want me to do, or demos that you may want me to do in Studio One, then what you'll need to do is you'll need to just click that little cogwheel at the bottom of the screen, somewhere over there, and adjust it back to 720. What's my internet bandwidth? The last speed test I did, it's about 0.9 megs. Sometimes it goes up to 1.2 if I am lucky, which is not enough to do a HD broadcast. I don't think I can even do 480. It's just, the thing is, it's not very consistent. It's up and down. So I can be 1300 for a few seconds and then it will go down to 400 or less. It's rubbish. Absolutely rubbish. And there's not a lot I can do about it because the people that own the land that our apartment block sits on refuse to have fiber cable installed. So it is what it is, and we're a fair distance away from the nearest digital exchange. So it is what it is, and it's what I have to live with. So this, unfortunately, is the only way I can do any live streaming other than hijacking Johnny's or Dave's. That's all I've got. So there we go. Such is life. It's a little bit disappointing. Because I tried my hardest with OBS, but no joy. And I have a cup of now cold tea to deal with. I do apologize for being late. I've had a family issue to deal with, but now we've kind of got that all sorted out now, so I'm here. So I'm really sorry about that. So we have 7 people in the room. Let's get to it. Could you please give us a brief presentation of your good self? What type of questions you'd want to answer and so forth? Well, I put up a video earlier on. Hey, Vim, how you doing, mate? Good to see you. I put a video up earlier on this afternoon that basically talks about what these Q&A sessions will be all about. They are bring your questions on mixing, mastering, recording, songwriting, arranging, home studio session work, anything, all of that, and all Studio One questions that you've got. That's the kind of thing that we're dealing with here. That's the kind of thing that I want to deal with. Any of your questions that you have related to all things music and music production, then those are good questions to get going with. So I do believe there is a bit of a delay between chat and the stream. So we are going to have to, that's another thing we're going to have to bear with. Let me see, I've got my laptop over here for which I'm monitoring things as well. So I'm just going to check that. You have a question, go for it. Questions are good. Let's see what the stream is like on, I have a very old computer over here. And I'd really like to see what it looks like over there. Hey, Bobby Booth is in the house. I'm going to get this thing set up as well. Okay, let's have a look, see if we've got some questions. Any genres of music I prefer? What, personally or from a music production point of view? Don't worry, Lupax. Don't worry about being late. I'm late as well. I had some issues to take care of, but we're all good now. What genres of music do I prefer? Peter asks. Personally, I was born and bred on jazz, particularly modern jazz. So anything from 1943 onwards. So kind of like the beginning of the bebop era and beyond is kind of my music period. So I grew up listening to Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk. Was probably my first piano inspiration, I guess you could call it. And then, of course, in the 1980s, as a kid, I started getting into Steely Dan and the beginnings of fusion music. So I got into the Brecker Brothers and all of that kind of stuff as well. In terms of mixing, I'm mostly mixing jazz at the moment, but I also mix acoustic and folk music as well sometimes, Christian music. So I have a regular client called Bob David Bell, who is a singer-songwriter. He's a Christian guy, and he has been in here and he's done an EP with me here. And I've added keyboard parts, drums, upright bass, fretless bass, and all of that in here. And I mixed and mastered his EP, and it's done pretty well. I've had another guy called Pete Lowe, who is a friend of mine from Hong Kong. He lived in Scotland for his entire life, but he now lives in Hong Kong, and I worked on his jazz standards record about 18 months ago. So that's the kind of stuff that I do. Okay, let me just scroll back up so that I don't miss questions. Vim says, I've noticed when right-clicking an event that from the audio menu, there's a feature called crop to contents. I can't find anything like this in the manual. You might, I do believe that the manual has recently been updated. So you may want to check that and make sure that you have the latest manual for Studio One 3.5.1. I do believe it is available now. Yeah, that's hardcore bebop. Yeah, Parker and Train was what I grew up on. Truckee says this will probably take some setup time, but in the future, could you show a demo of comping for multi-track drums? We could look at that maybe in next week's, because I think at the moment I'm going to start just easing myself into this live streaming business and do maybe once a week. And certainly that's a great thing I can do. We could do comping multi-track drums. It's complicated. You have to really have your wits about you to do it, but you can do it. Lupax Records says, I was just busy uploading a classical album I did years ago for release on the 20th. Polished it off with Studio One. Excellent. Bobby Booth, didn't know they had jazz there, expected folk. Okay. Vim also says, I think when recording multi-track drums with layers activated, you'll get a layer for each mic'd up kit piece. That's correct, I believe. Don't worry, Johnny, we'll be gentle. Good, I appreciate that, because this is my first proper live stream. So I am here, basically, you are my script writers. You will provide me with the content for each and every episode that we do. I will try and have a little thing to demonstrate at the start of each session as well, so that we've got something to springboard off. So, or kind of a talking point. So that's what I'll try and do. But this is really just kind of like a very first episode, where really all I want to do is I just want to take your questions, and we'll do some stuff in Studio One if that's what you want. We can do all of that. So we've got 9 people in the room now. Lupax would like to explore some nice chord progressions. Yeah, so would I. I've spent my whole life exploring. As Truckee says, stream is consistent at 480. Yeah, if you click the little cogwheel at the bottom of the screen, Truckee, you should be able to get it up to 720. I'm just going to check my laptop here, and I have that at 720. So you should be able to get it up to 720. I hope you can. Will this be a weekly thing? Yes, Peter, that's my plan at the moment. I will see how it goes. If this first session is good and successful, then I'll maybe, if we get plenty of people in the room, then maybe I'll look to do this a bit more frequently than once a week. But we'll see about that. I'm going to talk to some folk as well and get some advice. Vim says he's getting good audio and video here. Excellent. Glad to hear it. That's what I like to hear. 720 is working smoothly, says Miles. Good to see you, Miles. Bobby Booth says, just got Notion 6, been downloading some of the instruments. Notion 6 is awesome. It's absolutely fantastic. I was a long-time Sibelius guy. I used to use Sibelius for writing horn charts and that kind of stuff. For sessions for my previous couple of albums and my last EP, I did all of the chart work for the horns and for backing vocals and for rhythm section charts. I did all of that in Sibelius, but as soon as I saw Notion 6 launched, when would that be? That would be over a year ago now. I was just blown away by it. I went and bought it straight away. Truckee says, I tried 720, but the video lags sometimes. Really, that's interesting. I'm just looking over at my crappy, cheap little AMD laptop that only has, I think it's the processor is it's an A4-1250 Truckee, if you know what one of those is. It's a dual core. It's one of those AMD dual core processors. It's only got 4 gigs of RAM, and it looks pretty good. So I don't know. It could be an internet thing at your end. I don't know. Lupax says harmonic analysis and exotic scales, chord construction in different genres and grooves and stuff. Yeah, you know what, Lupax? When I discovered John Coltrane, I discovered all sorts of fascinating and interesting harmonic concepts that he was into. And I went to university and I spent pretty much my entire course studying Coltrane harmonic devices, tritonal substitution theory with Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker. And I studied all of that kind of stuff, and Miles Davis as well. And I did music production as well. So it's kind of like a joint degree I did. Half of it was jazz and harmony and arranging and that kind of stuff. And then the other half was recording, mixing and that kind of stuff. Home recording made easy. Dave Vignola is in the house. Good to see you, my good friend. And yes, I am live, kind of, sort of, just barely by the skin of my teeth, live. I am pushing my upload speed to the max at the moment. So I am using, for those of you that don't know, I am using Google Hangouts on Air to do this. So it's a little bit funky and it's nowhere near as good as your streams are, David, and nowhere near as good as Johnny's. But this is just going to be simple, stripped back, no smart graphics or anything like that, because I just can't do it. It looks good, so it's working. Exactly. That's the way I see it too. I can do Studio One demos and stuff in here, but what I discovered with Skip Jones when I was doing some tests with him is that when I share my screen, it drops, for some reason, it drops the resolution down to 480. I don't know why that is. So when I share my screen, what you're all going to have to do is click the little cog and bump it back up to 720 so that we actually get good screen resolution for that. And the audio is It's all right. It's okay. It's not pristine sharp, but it's pretty good. It's as good as you can get with 720. So there we go. Yeah, that stuff is golden. I also studied that in my course, contemporary course. Yeah, that's good. Best thing I learned from jazz teacher was voice leading and semitonal movement between chords. Yeah, voice leading is fantastic for getting between one chord and another. Absolutely. Even if they're distant and remote chords, like moving between B flat 7 and E7, for example. Bobby Booth says, video freezes for a couple of seconds here once in a while. Okay. Let me take a look at my crappy little laptop. Seems to be all right at the moment over there. There is a bit of a delay actually between my actual live thing and the stream itself. Vim says 480 will do for me. I come from the days of black and white TV and wiggle in the aerial to get a picture. Yeah, I well remember those days. Yeah, when I was a kid, that's exactly what we had to do. So yeah, 480. I would really like to be 1080, but I just at this current time, there's just no way I'm going to get it. So I've seen folk do live stream, then point to a already made video and then make them come back to the stream after watching. Yes, that would be very complicated. And you know what? I don't think I'm smart enough to be able to pull that off. Because I'd have to have it queued up, ready to go. And no, I don't think that's going to work. Yeah, Bobby, try Trucky's right. Try 480 to see if you have less freezing. It does mean that the picture quality is not going to be so good, but you'll at least be able to make something out. And especially when I go to Studio One, you may lose quite a bit, but we'll try. Hey, Stephen, good to see you. Stephen Colanders here, saying hi. Good, thank you. Hi to you. Welcome. So we have 11 in the stream right now. So let's keep the questions coming in, folks, and the chat. Let's keep that going. And if there's anything you guys want me to demo in Studio One, then we can do that. Trucky already made a request to show multi-track comping. Now I don't have anything. I don't think I have anything that I can show just at the moment for that, but I can set that up, Trucky. If you send me a PM on Facebook and remind me, I'll make sure I set that up, because I got some tracks that I can do with that. Bobby says just set it there. Right, okay. All right, let's see. Anybody got any other questions? Thank you, Trucky. Trucky says we'll do. Excellent. Yeah, we can get that set up, and I can do a demo on that. I might even do a video on that as well, so that everybody gets the best of both worlds. We get a nice high definition video. Substitution chords with 2-5-1s and tritonal substitutions. Yeah, we can kind of touch on that a little bit. For those of you that don't know what tritonal substitution is, it's a little bit complicated, but essentially, in harmony, any chord can substitute pretty much for any other chord, providing they have at least one common chord tone, preferably two. I mean, the more chord tones you have in common, the better it's going to work. But if you've got at least just one common tone, then it will work. For example, let me just wheel this back out a little bit, and I'll try not knock my laptop off. Not tangle my feet. In fact, I'm probably going to have to move the laptop just for this. There we go. Move the laptop just for a minute. Okay, so tritonal substitution. What what has Truckee just said? Are users having less problems with 3.5.1 compared to 3.5? I certainly am. And to be honest, I only had like one major little issue, and that was to do with on the performance monitor where it shows you your CPU and the disk. The disk was going up to about 30% every now and then, just for no reason whatsoever. And with 3.5.1, gone. It doesn't do that anymore. So, but really, I've had hardly any issues with Studio One ever in 3 years. So tritonal substitution, how does this work? So what we want to do is we want to have a progression like a 5 to 1. So a G7 to C. Standard end of a song cadence. Now, what a tritone interval is it's 3 whole tones away from one note to another. So in this case, we want we've got a G chord, G7 going to C, and what we want to do is we want to substitute a chord that is a tritone, so 3 whole tones away from G. So we go G, A, B, one more tone, and you get to C sharp or D flat, depending on how you approach it and harmonically. If you're an optimistic person, then you would call it C sharp, because sharp is bright. Or if you're more a pessimistic kind of person, then maybe you'd call it D flat. So so that would be your root note instead of the G. Now, the interesting thing with D7 is D7 has a B and an F in it, as well as the A flat. Now, the reason why that kind of works is because in G7, you also have an F and a B. So if I play the G in the bass, so now we have G essentially then going to C. Okay, now if I change that bass note from a G to my D flat, but keep the same notes here, does exactly the same job. You get exactly the same resolution. So that's what tritonal substitution is. Chord 5 and tritone have 2 common tones. Exactly, it has the F and the B. Those are your 2 common chord tones. And that's why it works so securely. So substitution theory in total, you can have any chord substitute for any other chord, providing you have at least 1 chord tone in common, preferably 2. 2 is always better. And so it can work. So tritonal substitution was really something that came about in kind of like the early 20th century. The music of people like Ravel and Debussy and that kind of stuff. Their kind of music started getting into those kind of harmonic realms. But then the beboppers in the 1940s, they took hold of that concept and embedded it into their music. And that's the reason why in the blues scale as we know it now, post 1945, it has a flatted 5th in the scale. So the blues scale would be root, flat 3rd, 4th, flat 5th, 5, flat 7, and the octave, right? That's how we know it. But prior to bebop, there was no flatted 5th. It just went like this. Which is essentially an E-flat pentatonic scale. But you're just starting it on the C. Okay. And so what the beboppers did was, because they had the tritonal substitution in their harmonic concept, they added the flatted fifth. This guy here. And that's why that's there. But any other chord substitutes for any other chord, essentially. So there you go, chord substitution theory. I could talk about that all night, but I won't because it would bore people. Truckee says, I was getting a few pops and clicks in 3.5, but 3.5.1 works great for me. Yeah, I've heard that as a common complaint, that people were getting more CPU spikes and pops and clicks and that kind of stuff in 3.5, but when they went to the 0.1 update rather, it cleared it all up. Yes, Stephen says it's the flat five again. Yep, flat fives. Or, as they called it in the Middle Ages, the devil in music. The tritone interval. Yep, if you were a church organist in that kind of period, like the 1400s, 1500s, maybe even the 1600s, and you played that, you'd get booted out. At the very least, you'd get booted out. And you'd be banned. You'd never play the organ ever again. But I have done worse than play that on a church organ. Oh, I have done much worse than that. I have played a hymn called We Plough the Fields and Scatter, and in the middle of the kind of counterpoint in the harmony on the two manuals, I started playing Charlie Parker licks, and I got into lots of trouble. Lubac says, I have a song here that goes A minor G all the time. What chords can I substitute? Oh, you mean you're talking like it goes... Yeah, that's going to get a little bit tiresome for your listener. You can do stuff like this. So you could go G, A minor, G with B in the bass, C, D11, and you can do all that kind of bluesy stuff as well, if it fits your style. Unless, of course, your style is folk, in which case you're not going to do that. Stephen Colander says, I have to say I like my Studio One DAW. Yes, so do I. I used Cubase for, I don't know, over 20 years. You know what? I'm not entirely sure how long I used it for. I used it from the very first version of Cubase, when it used to be called, what was it? Cubase VST, I think. And then before that, I used a piece of software made by the same company called, what was it called? Pro 24, which is entirely a MIDI sequencer. I'll put my seat in a little bit, actually. There we go. Which was entirely a MIDI sequencer, but it was a really cool MIDI sequencer. And that was my first exposure to the whole idea of recording using a computer, because before then I used tape machines, either 4-track tape machines or 8-track tape machines or bigger. So my background is in the tape machine and console background. So there you go. Jim Hammond is here. Hey, Jim, good to see you. He's just got online. Stephen says, it's been a long road for me. Yes. Vim says, I came from Cubase 5, got so fed up with the inconsistencies and crashing that I sold it. Yes. You know what? I didn't even sell mine because I was just like, you know what? It is so inconsistent. I don't want to force that onto anybody else. Lupax Maybe go relative minor, E minor, C6 if melody allows. Yes, you could do that as well. Bobby says we have a piano player in our church that used to play in honky tonks. What, you mean like stride style? This kind of, that kind of stuff on an out of tune piano. Yep. You could do that and then kind of like all that kind of stuff up the top. Yeah. My church background, I go to a church where we play much more contemporary music. And so I'm more disposed to playing a Fender Rhodes or something like this. How much live playing do I do? Not as much as I used to. Yeah, I really don't do nearly as much. I had a band for just over 21 years, which I ran for all 21 of those years. It started out as a 12-piece soul jazz band, I think is what I called it. So we did a lot of Stevie Wonder stuff. We did Steely Dan songs. We did Stevie Wonder. We did Sting. We did Bruce Hornsby. There's a whole load of stuff. Plus, we did like we did new and fresh kind of funk arrangements of jazz standards as well. And that's what we did. But then, and so in 2008, we were still a 12-piece-ish band. And then the financial crash kind of happened, and I had to lose some of my musicians. So we went down to a 6-piece. And then from there, it was a case of venues didn't really want to be booking bands that are that big. And if they were booking us, then, you know, the pay was just, it wasn't worth it. So we stripped down to a trio, and somehow we managed to make the songs that we did as a 12-piece work as a trio. Somehow. Trucky says, what do you think of the PreSonus RC500 and VT1 channel strip add-ons? I have both of those. They are very good. They are modeled after, the RC500 is modeled directly after the hardware, the PreSonus hardware unit. And I believe the VT1, although it doesn't say in any of the material that comes with it, any of the documentation, I believe it's modeled after the ADL700, the PreSonus unit. They are both very good channel strips. The compressors are, well, on the RC500, the compressor is quite aggressive. I did a review of those on one of the shows I do with Dave Vignola, if he's still here. I don't know if you're still here, David, but we do a show called That Plugin Show, which is myself, David, and Johnny Gibe, the three of us, and we demo plugins, basically. Either plugins that we've recently discovered or they're classic plugins within Studio One and what have you. We kind of show what we like about those plugins, and I did a little review on those as part of that show. So go and look for that. It's That Plugin Show on the Home Recording Made Easy channel, and you should find it there. But yeah, essentially, they are really good. I like them. I don't use them very much. I use them fairly sparingly, but they're pretty good. What about going through Corda and other MIDI plugins? I intend to do that on the next plugin show with Dave Vignola. So yeah, check that out there. And that's on Saturday. at I forget what time it is. David, if you're still here, could you maybe pop a link to that or pop some info on the plugin show on Saturday in the chat? That would be cool. Do you have any good examples of never-ending chord progressions like minor chord, half step above, major chord, major? You know, there's a song by a guitarist called Mike Stern, who for a long time played with Michael Brecker, the tenor sax player, and he wrote a song called "On Common Ground" that kind of uses that approach to basically temporarily shift key, and it's a beautiful piece of music, but it uses that approach where you're voice leading between two chords, so kind of like going from let me go back to here. And you can just keep going on and on and on, and basically the bass is just going up in a chromatic scale, and it's how you do the voicings in the right hand that make it interesting. Stephen Colander, I like them a lot. I'm not really quite sure what you're saying there, Stephen. Sorry. Trucker says, thanks, I'll check that out. Anyone here using a fader port 8? I don't have one. I have the original fader port. Basically, I have no room left on my desk for a fader port 8, but I would love to get one if I could. They also have some good presets. I take it, Bobby, you're talking about the other plugins above. Mike Stone and Bob Berg and stuff. Yes. Okay, I think I've caught up with the chat there. And we have 12 people still in the room, which is very, very cool. That's probably the most I've ever had in a live stream. I'll take that. I know, other people have 30, 40, 50 people in the live stream. In fact, one of my friends has like 2,000 on his live streams in the first 10 minutes. And I'm not at all jealous of that, as you can see. Okay, Bobby. So you were talking about the RC500 and the VT1 and their presets. Yeah, the presets are not bad. I would say they're better than the presets you get with the standard Studio One compressor, for sure, and better EQ as well. Okay, any other questions? Oh, sorry. I meant to actually explain what I did on the keyboard there. So starting in the key of C on a C major chord, and then going to A with C sharp in the bass. That takes you to D minor, or it can even take you to D major if you want. And then B over D sharp to E. D flat with F in the bass to F sharp. A flat with G in the bass to A flat. F over A. B flat. G over B. Back to the key of C. So that's kind of an interestingly, a more interesting harmonic way to harmonize a chromatic scale. So there you go. Any other questions? It's just about 2 minutes past 11, and I will stay on for a few more minutes, and then we will wrap this up. Fantastic, says Peter. Thank you. Appreciate that. All of those years at university and playing in jazz clubs was not wasted. Right, some more cold tea. Yummy. Especially if you inhale it. Alrighty, any more questions after that little tea break? We're now down to 10 people in the room, so we've had a couple of people go away. I'm sorry to have lost you. But don't worry, this live stream will have more focus as we go. Only 6 p.m. here. That's nice. When is my next album coming out? Loop Axe Records has asked a very good question. My next EP, I have started working on it. I can even show you a sneak peek because you're my live stream guests. A sneak peek at one of my songs. There you go. That's the chord changes to one of my songs. If you can read my handwriting, you are a genius. But this song is already mapped out. This is essentially how I do it. I sit down at the keyboard, or even if I'm not in the studio, not at the keyboard, even if I'm just like walking about with my kids, or I'm at the museum with my kids, then very often I will be in my head. I'm working on the song. So I'll be working on chord changes and I'll be going, oh, that sounds good. Oh, yeah, I like that. I need to, sit down at the piano and work with that. So I work with it and then I write it down. And then that basically enables me to then free up memory space in my head for the next song. So I map out the entire song, even though I've only got like chord changes written on this sheet. When I'm reading this, I've got the whole band arrangement here. So I know what the bass is going to do. I know what the drums are going to do. I know what all the guitars are going to do. I know what the horns are going to do. I know what the backing vocals are going to do. I have that already mapped out up here. And this is my guide to it here, basically. So to answer your question, in a roundabout kind of way, the next EP is going to be coming out in the first week of September. And I think you're really going to like this one. It's got some grooves, man. It's got a bit more backbeat. It's a bit more. It's not dance. It's still jazz. It's still kind of my blend of jazz and rock and soul and pop and all of that goes into it, and comedy. That all goes into making my songs. But it's got a bit more of a beat to it, so a bit more of a pulse. So and some more interesting harmonic developments. I've been working on some new concepts to do with harmony. So they are going to be coming out in the first week of September. What have I missed? Any recommendations for recognizing frequencies for EQ? Great question. I think if you do a Google search for it, you may find that there is I think there is something you can get either as an application or just online, where it's kind of like a hearing test. It plays test tones, and then you identify the frequencies that way. And it certainly gets you honed in on certain frequencies. A good thing to do, though, if you're not wanting to do that, is take a piece of music, just like a stereo 2-track file, bring that into Studio One, slap the Pro EQ on there, and then get that Q as tight as you can possibly get it, up to 24 or so, and then boost it, and then sweep it around, and then use you kind of like just sweep it around and get your ears used to what the different frequency bands sound like, what the treble spots sound like in particular. Because if you can spot the treble spots in a track when you're mixing, then you're gonna mix faster, because the quicker you can identify treble frequencies, bad frequencies, masking, all of that kind of stuff, and you can get all of that stuff cleaned out of your mix, then what you're left with is all the good stuff that you can enhance, and that will speed up your mixing workflow. So yeah, so getting used to what 500 sounds like, getting used to what 2K sounds like, and why it's so freaking annoying. Also, getting to recognize what low, mid, and low end build-up sounds like. So take that Pro EQ and get it down to like 30, 40, 50, 60 hertz with the boost up as high as you can get it. I would recommend you put a limiter in the post on the mix bus so that you don't get any clipping when you do that. And it will help you identify where those trouble spots are, so that when you're actually on a mix, you can go, I can hear the 500 build up in, I don't know, in the cellos or whatever. Lupac says Q on 8 gain plus 18, sweep and destroy. You'll hear it scream. Yes. Some good ideas for EQ. Thank you, Truckee. Yeah. Jim says, hey, no disagreements today. I try and avoid them wherever possible. Although I have to admit, sometimes my sarcasm gets the better of me. Peter says, I'm recording my guitar amp with an SM57 close-up. Is there any point of adding a room mic? It's a small room. I would say no. To be perfectly honest, I have never really seen the point of a room mic for a guitar amp. Whether it's a big room or a small room, never really seen the point of it. If you're miking up an amp, it's because you're wanting the sound that comes from the head and the speaker cone of that particular amp and all the circuitry, the tubes and everything else involved. You really shouldn't be too bothered about the room, in my opinion. Lupac says, would you put a link to the first EP in the description, please? I will. I'll do that as soon as I get off. As soon as I get off on this. I'll definitely do that. I'm just scrolling up to seeing if I've missed anything. I don't think I have. Try a fist away from the grill off axis. Yeah, that's a great suggestion for when you're actually putting the mic in front of your amp. Yep, a fist away from the grill off axis is an excellent suggestion. Yep, I do that every time. Steven says, I like what you do. You like jazz, using Studio One, playing, writing, jazz, pop standards is my thing at this moment. Good. I'm very glad to hear that. That's very cool. Somebody else that uses Studio One to make jazz records. That's great. That's very encouraging to know that I am not the only one. So, yeah. That's fantastic. Any other questions? We're at 10 past 11, which somebody is going to tell me is about 10 past 6 Central Time. I bet you I'm right. If I'm wrong, then please correct me. Peter says, thank you, Johnny and Lupax. You're welcome, Peter. MJN Studios, good to see you. Any advice on practice tips for a beginner piano player? I do, actually. My best advice would be, first of all, to make sure that you learn when you're starting out to play with good technique with your hands and your fingers. Okay? I'll show you something that I see a lot of people doing. When they're playing a chord, they will play it like this. They'll use these 3 fingers, thumb, first and second fingers. There are a lot of problems with that. Truckee says 511 Central. Thank you. There's a lot of problems with that. First of all, you're actually going to hurt yourself right across here. Second of all, you're not really going to be able to extend beyond a triad. And it kind of lends itself to kind of root position, you know. And that's pretty much going to be your limit. So I would suggest what you do is you learn to strengthen each one of your 5 fingers on both hands. And there are some good exercises I can show you. There's one which I kind of, it's kind of like a skipping up, but not skipping. You skip a note going up, but don't skip a note coming down, okay? And what that does is a 5-finger exercise, and it takes you all the way up from here to here, okay? So you do it in a 1-octave pattern. So the right hand pattern goes like this. So you go C, E, F, G, A. So you've skipped the D. So you're going C, E. So you're skipping out the D. And that takes you up to the A, and then you come back down on next door fingers. And that starts you on the D, and then you repeat the pattern. And that takes you up to the C. All right? Now, with this hand, it's a little bit different, because with this hand, your right hand, the skip is here. But with the other hand, the skip is between these two fingers here. But the same technique applies, okay? And so the trick is, do this hand first, then do this hand, have a metronome, set it nice and slow. And what you want to be doing is you want to be playing eighth notes, in my opinion, eighth notes at 60 beats a minute, so that your fingers are basically doing double that, which is 120 beats a minute. So eighth note with the metronome set at 60. So you're not going too fast. And it's not going to sound particularly musical, and it's not going to sound particularly interesting. And you do that with one hand, then the other, and then you put the two together. And this is where the fun starts. So what you're aiming for is you're aiming for nice uniformity between left hand and right hand, and a consistent as you build up the tempo. So you start nice and slow at 60 beats a minute, and then you maybe notch that up a couple of beats a minute, and then you notch it up again, and you just repeat that a few times. It's going to be, in terms of your mind, it's going to be mind-numbingly boring, but I'll tell you what, it will get your fingers strong, consistent, and then anything you do beyond that, whether you're playing blues, jazz, gospel, classical, whether you're playing a Tchaikovsky piano concerto, or whether you're playing a Mozart minuet, or whether you're playing Miles Davis's All Blues, it's going to work, and it's going to stand you in good stead. If you want to make it a little bit more interesting, once you've done that at that kind of regimented kind of tempo, then what I suggest, put a drum loop on and play it in your favorite style. So you could go. And so on. MGN says, so it's C, E, F, G, A. Yes. C, E, F, G, A. That's going up, and then coming down, it would be then, so you go, staying on the A with the little finger, then the next finger comes down, next door notes. And that sets you up to do the next going up pattern. Yeah. And as you can see there, that was woefully, shockingly inconsistent rhythmically. I've not done that kind of practice for quite a while. It's Missy. Missy is here. Hey, Missy. Just over the Irish Sea in Ireland. Good to see you, my friend. But yeah, I mean, Bobby said practice, 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 and you know, he's got a point. I know that sounds boring and it sounds uninspiring, but really, essentially, it is. It is just about practice and working hard at getting those basic skills under your belt, basic technique under your belt. Because then once you've got that, then you can do all the other fun stuff, and you'll be able to do all the other fun stuff a heck of a lot better than missing out on all of that, if you know what I mean. MGN says, cool, that's what I needed. Thanks. Yeah, so make it regular, make your practice time regular. It doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be, 6, 7 hours a day. I was crazy enough to start playing drums when I was a kid, when I was a very little kid, like, 3, 4 years old. And I used to play all day long. And I did that all the way through up until like my 30s. And then, of course, I got married. And we moved into this small apartment, and there's nowhere for my drums. So I'm on practice pads now. But I pretty much, I play every single day. I play for several hours every single day. It's the only way I keep my technique and my chops up to a professional standard. Mary Had a Little Lamb is getting old. Yeah. You could always add that to it if you really wanted to make it a little bit more interesting. 20 minutes a day is where I'm at. Well, that's great. 20 minutes is perfect. Doing it every single day is ideal, because then it's regular, it becomes routine. It's like an athlete training. An athlete trains every single day, and you basically just build it up and build it up and build it up, and before you know it, you'll be playing for several hours a day and you'll not really notice it. What's the topic? Scales. Currently it is, Missy, but we are talking anything from mixing, mastering, recording, songwriting, music production, Studio One, anything like that. We have not done anything in Studio One yet, but that's cool. Das ist gut, ja. Get the BS under your belt, says Stephen. Yeah, you kind of have to. You kind of, if you want to get anywhere in music, you kind of have to jump through all the hoops if you want to be good at what you do. It's like if you want to be a good mix engineer, you have to learn how to make mistakes. You have to learn how to do it badly before you do it well. You know what I mean? Your first mixes are awful. Your first mixes are embarrassing. But you know what? At that point, at that time, they represent the best that you have. And that's something to be proud of. And, a few more mixes down the line, yes, those early mixes sound embarrassing to you, but you can look at the work you're doing now, and then you can reflect on the work you did before, and you go, and you think to yourself, I have no idea how I missed the fact that it's so low, all the mids are scooped out there, or, I've got a smiley face EQ on everything. And you're just like, I would never do that now. Well, that shows you how much you've progressed, which is why I keep every mix that I do. I have an archive hard drive, and every piece of work I do, whether it's for me or whether it's for a client, it goes there. And that way, I can always reflect. I can always look back on how far I've come. Peter says, I got the Kramer Master Tape plugin from Waves on their July 4th sale. Have you tried it? No, I have not. I kind of missed out on that because I've been really busy. So I guess I'm just gonna have to let that one go by. Have I tried it? No, I haven't. And if so, how and where do you use it? Well, it's a tape machine. You have to think of it like a real tape machine. It's like the console shaper. It's the same principle here. a lot of mistakes that people have made with the console shaper, and why they don't like what they get with the console shaper and they dismiss it fairly quickly, is because what they do is they do their mix and then they think, oh, I'll put the console shaper on the master bus and then, you know, that's it. Well, that's not what it's meant to be used. That's not how it's meant to be used. It's a console. The clue's in the name. It's a console shaper. It's meant to shape your mix so that it's like it's going through a console. So, you know, think of it, if you're going to use something like analog plugins, a tape machine emulation, or something like the console shaper, or some other, you know, the Virtual Console Collection by Stephen Slate. If you're going to use that kind of stuff, then you have to change your mindset. And your mindset has to be that your Studio One is an analog console. You're either using it as an SSL, or you're using it as a Neve, or you're using it as an API, or one of the Abbey Road EMI consoles, depending upon what plugins you have to achieve that sound. If you're going to go for those kind of analogy kind of sounds and you want that analog kind of vibe, then you have to think of your console in Studio One as a real console. Otherwise, you're not going to get it to work for you, and you're not going to get the kind of sound that you are hearing in your head. So when it comes to things like the tape machine plugin, think about, how was a tape machine originally used in a real studio? Well, there are two main ways in which that happened. One was that all the channels were routed to the tape machine, so that when you recorded through the console and into the tape machine, and directly onto the tape. So you'd have like a 16 or 24 or 32 channel tape, which is really, really massively thick and extremely expensive stuff. And you have to think about, when I have, let's say I create a track in Studio One for a fretless bass. You plug the fretless bass into your interface, that goes into the channel. Now, if you're thinking console shaper, that kind of thing, and you've got one of the waves, like the Waves SSL E channel, and you're slapping that on there to do your EQ and compression, which is great, by the way. I thoroughly recommend doing something like that. But now that you've got that SSL plugin on there, you have to think about, now we're talking about, we are using Studio One as an SSL. Otherwise, it's not going to work for you. You're not going to get the kind of sound that you want. So you're thinking about plugging in to an SSL. In your head, you're thinking, I'm plugging into an SSL. The audio is going through that channel, and then it's going out to a tape machine. So when you hit record, you're recording to a tape machine. So it's your mindset that you need to do. It's not just about slapping the tape machine on the mix bus and going, great, now I have tape emulation. Hey, I have an analog sound. Well, yeah, you do, but you need to do it right. You need to do it the right way round in order for you to get the very best results. So I hope that helps. I'm trying to remember who asked that. It was Peter that asked that. Bobby says, I don't want to talk about my first mix. Yeah, I think I know exactly what you mean. Jim says, my first mix was in 1972. Steven says, I save all my mixes to see how far I come. Yep, I do that too. Missy says, my first mix was 7 months ago. Some progress, but a ton to learn. Yeah, you know what? 7 months. You are 7 months further down the road than you were 7 months ago. And you have learned a lot of stuff. I know, Missy, you've learned a lot of stuff, and you're applying that to your work. Go back, listen to that very first mix, and compare it to what you've just done today. Have a look at, do a proper comparative analysis of those two mixes. Don't just kind of like listen and say, hey, that mix was rubbish compared to what I'm doing now. Well, think about why it is. Why is that the case? What is it about mix B 7 months down the road that is better than mix A, which was on day one? write down some notes. Think, have a look at, how am I doing EQ better? How am I doing compression better? How am I dealing with reverb and delay and panning and using the faders? How am I doing all of that better? And you should be able to be able to chart your progress quite nicely. And you should also, just by comparing those two mixes, you should be able to then go, and yeah, I can do this better, and yeah, I can do this better, and yes, I can do this better. And then you can start to do strategy of how you're going to do that better for your next mix. That's the way I work. And it's worked for me. My mixes, compared to last year, my mixes are light years better. I listened to a record I did for a client 18 months ago, and I compare it to the one that I'm working on at the moment, and I'm just like, man, the difference is night and day. I'm so much better at EQ. I'm so much better at compression. And I've been doing this since, as I say, the 1980s, the early 1980s. Well, mid 1980s, say 86, 87, somewhere around there. Bobby says, I put the tape on the master and turn it on and you'll hear the difference. That's very true. You will very much hear a difference. But again, you need to go back to the correct mindset. Peter, be sure to put the tape and console shaper on first. Absolutely. Before you do anything. Even before you gain stage, get those suckers on. And then gain stage through those. And then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be mixing through those. Even actually, if you're going to use the SSL E channel, get that across every channel. And you're going to mix through that SSL and then into the Kramer tape machine at the end. After maybe you've got mixed bus compression. I mean, I always have a mixed bus compressor on the master bus straight away. It's the first thing I put on. I don't really tend to use the console shaper so much, but it's pretty good. I like it. I just don't tend to use it very much. Mostly because by the time I've thought, oh, hang on a minute, we've got that, it's kind of too late. I've already started. So, and we're coming up on 11:30. I do not want to overrun into Johnny's broadcast, which will be in half an hour. So we're going to stay on just for a few more minutes. Maybe I'll take a couple more questions and then we will quit this. Use the new SoftTube plugin. You mean the SoftTube tape machine? Yeah, I don't have that either. You can get that from the Persona shop, I believe. Great tip, says Peter. Thank you. Would you put a tape on every channel and the master fader? If I had a tape machine, I think I probably would. I think my friend David, my good friend David Vignola, he has this kind of analog mindset that I'm talking about. And it's actually, David, if you're still here, I blame you entirely for this. Because it's, his influence has got me thinking back to where I started, because I kind of started with consoles and tape machines. That's where I started, and came to DAWs, maybe a little bit later on down the line. But I guess because we have digital now, we don't tend to think like that anymore. But David started getting me thinking about that kind of sound and going for that kind of sound again. And what he does is he puts the tape machine across every channel. He puts the virtual console across every channel. He puts the SSL across every channel. And that's where he does his mixing. And so what he ends up with, and he has the tape machine, the master bus tape machine, and the master bus compressor on the mix bus. And so he ends up with a very, very analog sounding mix at the end of it. And actually, to be honest, you know what? The best records, in my opinion, the best records were mixed in the 70s. Things like Steely Dan's Asia, or the record before that, the Royal Scam, beautiful mixes. And all done on SSL and Neve and API consoles and all of that, and that's the sound I grew up with. So yeah. Johnny's MJN says, thanks again. That's exactly what I needed, especially for the left hand. Cool. I do tape on all channels for the multi-track, then stereo version on the master bus. Dave Vignola taught me that. Yes. Yeah. I blame David as well. It's entirely his fault. We should punish him vigorously for it, I think. That said, not too hard because I'm doing a live stream with him on Saturday. So there we go. Dave did a review recently on the tape, the soft tube tape. Yes, he did. Looks really, really good. Sounds really, really good. I really like it. And I'm particularly liking that Personas seem to be, you know, when 3.0 launched in May of 2015, there was all of this talk about Acoustica getting involved, soft tube, Steven Slate getting involved in all the Mix FX engine stuff, and I thought, yeah. And kind of as time's gone on, I've thought, not really very much has come of that. And then all of a sudden, soft tube come up with their tape machine, which can be used in the Mix FX engine. It's awesome. You know, it's kind of like, hey, here we go. So we've got the console shaper, we've got the CTC1, and the next logical step is to get people like Acoustica and Softtube and all those other manufacturers, Steven Slate and all of that getting involved. So I'm pretty much anticipating that in the not too distant future, we'll probably get something from Acoustica. We'll probably get something from Steven Slate as well, in addition. Because that was all mentioned in the 3.0 launch. So I expect that Personas, being the company of their word as they are, that will come very soon. It works well with the NLS. Yes. Yep, I've heard that too. As I say, I can't speak to that experience because I don't have it. Some of these plugins are a little bit out of my price range, generally speaking. Should compression for drums, bass be fast attack, guitar and vocals be slow for 3 sound field? I'm going to answer that with it depends. It depends upon the style of music that you're mixing, to be honest. But as a general rule of thumb, I would probably say that for drums, you would want a slow attack or a slow-ish attack, because you want to allow the transient of the strike of the snare drum or the beater of the kick drum, you want that to come through and then the compressor to compress. And the same for the bass. Again, you kind of want a slowish attack. And it depends what you mean by where. Oh, she means 3D sound field. Yeah. With compression, what tends to happen with a fast attack is that it grabs the transient to start with, which then gives the impression that it's being pushed back a little in the mix. But if you use a slower attack, then more of the transient goes through without being compressed, which gives it a much more forward sounding effect. So you can use the attack setting on your compressor to help you get the elements you want in your mix forward and the elements you want back in your mix behind. Okay, so for example, on a lead vocal, I may well go for a slowish, a medium to slowish attack, so that the vocal has a bit more of a forward and upfront sound. Okay, but the backing vocals, I don't want to have that same upfront in your face sound. So I would give them a faster attack, which will push them further back. So I would maybe give them a faster attack and a slower release, so that they sit further back in the mix by using compression to do that. Drums and bass are punchy sounds, so you probably want them quite up front. So slow attack, my opinion, is a good option. Slow attack, fast release. Guitar, Again, depends where you want the guitar in the mix. If you're wanting a guitar to kind of be much more background, like if you've got like a bed of guitars, like 5 or 6 guitars playing different harmony parts or different accompanying parts that are more in the background, then yeah, you could use a faster attack. What is your go-to VST drum kit? Currently, I am using the Native Instruments Abbey Road 60s drum kit. I love it, mostly because it reminds me of my first drum set, which was a Ludwig 1964 classic drum set. Waves is holding a big sale over CK901 is a perpetual 10% discount, lots of $29 plugins. Yes, they are. If you're after cheap and cheerful plugins, Waves do some excellent plugins. Grab them while you can, because I don't think the $29 discount will stay for very long. They were doing like 80% off some of their plugins. So great. I'm pleased, Missy, that that's valuable to you. Yeah, it's one of the, compression is one of those things that I suppose it depends on how you have it explained to you. It can either be really complicated or it can be really, really simple. And for the longest time, when I was first starting out, compression was a complete mystery to me. And then I got to university in the early 90s, and there was a mix engineer there who was the lead tutor on the course that I was on there. And I took him aside one lunchtime and said, look, it's becoming so frustrating that I cannot get a handle on compression. And I really, really want to get this down. I want to get this understood. I want to get this so that I can apply it straight away and apply this understanding. So he said, okay. So we sat at the console, and it wasn't just that he sat there and explained it to me. He did better than that. We ran tape through the console, and he showed me what the attack and release do, what the effect of a higher ratio and a low threshold does to your mix. And he showed me how all of the parameters of a compressor are interrelated. They all work in tandem together, he says, smacking his microphone. And once I understood what the attack can do for you and what the release can do for you, I mean, I've done a 3-video series on this very YouTube channel. Go check those out, Missy, and hopefully they'll help you. And I've done one on parallel compression as well. Go and check those videos out. There are 3 video series on compression in my mixing tips series. Go check those out, and hopefully they will explain to you in a bit more depth with some practical demonstration of compression at work. And hopefully those will help you. Jim says, even 90%. Yes, it's true. If you are a Waves plugin fan, go get them. But I would say, on another note, I would caution you, don't just get plugins for the sake of getting plugins. Just, get plugins that are going to be of use to you, plugins that are going to be of value. Plugins that you're going to be able to understand and not have to spend ages trying to figure out how it works. Because there are some really, really complicated plugins out there. And you really don't have to spend time trying to figure out how a plugin works before you can actually use it to mix with. And then your mixes will suck for a while because you're not really sure what you're doing with this darn thing. So proceed with caution. Peter says, do you mix your drums in the Contact mixer or in Studio One? Do you print them on a single track, or do you multi-output from Contact? I do all of the above. Yeah, with the Abbey Road 60s drum kit, it's a 3 miking system. So you have a kick drum mic and 2 overheads. So there's not really a lot you can do with mixing in the Contact mixer. Do I print them onto a single track, or do I multi-output? Sometimes if I'm happy with how it sounds on the single track, then I leave it as a single stereo track. Because to be honest, because as I say, the Abbey Road 60s drum set is mic'd 2 overheads and a kick drum mic, and that's all it is. So I don't really see massively the point of multi-tracking them out, unless I specifically want to do something to the kick drum. But you know what? It's that Ludwig kick drum is nice, it's big, it's round, and it's very resonant, and I like that. I've always liked open tones on a drum set. So there you go. Okay, we are coming up on 11:45. Nearly time for Johnny Gibe. And so I'm going to wrap this up here. We've had some fantastic questions. We've had somewhere between 10 and 13 people on this stream the whole time. I've done a little bit of piano playing for you, which is cool. We've not done anything in Studio One, but maybe we can do that next time. We are on a Thursday night here in Scotland. I will be back here on this stream same time next week, and if you guys are really up for it and up for developing this live stream with me, then maybe we can maybe switch to doing twice a week. Depends on how many people come in. Really, at the moment we have 12 or 13 people in, so it'd be nice if we can get some more people in. If we get like 30, 40 people on, then maybe I might consider making it like alternate nights. I don't want to get people to the point where they're, you know, they're all live streamed out, because they're doing Johnny's live stream, they're doing Dave's live stream, and they're doing mine and any others that are out there. I don't want to tire you guys out. So Dave and Johnny are good, very, very good friends of mine. They are among the very closest friends in the world that I have, and they are great colleagues to work with. So I don't want to tread too much on their toes. So yeah, probably at the moment just once a week, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very, very much, all of you, for coming in and for all of your questions. It's been great fun. I've really enjoyed it, and you've made my very first live stream go really well, and I'm really, really happy with it, and I've really enjoyed it. So thanks a lot. Dave talks too much. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he doesn't necessarily let me get a word in, but I'm working on that with him. He's a good guy. Missy says, thanks, Johnny. If you get a chance to critique the mix I sent you. Oh, Missy, you did send me that. I do apologize. I will have to try and go back and... Did you send it on Facebook? If you sent it on Facebook, here's the thing. If you have Dropbox, could you do me a favor and put the mix in your Dropbox and send me a link to it, and then I will get it off there and I can get it into Studio One that way. I can't get it out of Studio One on Facebook. Plus, if I'm doing it in Facebook, I'm bound by the Facebook audio engine, which I don't want to be. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate that. Okay, I think we are just about done. Thanks, Truckee, for being here. Thank you, Bobby Booth. You said I'll be here. You are the ever faithful Bobby Booth, and we love you for it, mate. Thank you so much. Yes, you said Facebook Messenger, Missy. Okay, if you could whack that into Dropbox and send email me a link to it. Email me at johnnylipsham@gmail.com. Then I will go get that, and I'll get that into Studio One, and I will listen to it there. And then I will send you a PM, and we'll hook up on Skype, and we'll do the critique. Okay? Hope that's good for you. Peter says, thank you. You're a big help. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate the encouragement and the kind words. Okay, folks. I will see you on Dave Vignola's plug-in show on Saturday over at the Home Recording Made Easy channel. Make sure you are all there, because you don't want to miss that, because they're always hilarious fun, and we get to look at toys. Okay, take care, folks. Bye for now.